Today we're going to bring you research into Ukrainian paintings stolen by the Russian occupying forces in 2022. Works by Ukrainian artist Arkhip Kuindzhi. Works which, prior to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, were housed here, at the Kuindzhi Art Museum in Mariupol. Arkhip Ivanovich Kuindzhi was born in January of 1842 in Mariupol. His name stems from the Mariupolitan Greek translation, Master of Horses. He grew up in a poor family. His father was a Mariupolitan Greek shoemaker. In case you're wondering, Mariupolitan Greek is a dialect spoken by the ethnic Greeks living along the northern coast of the Sea of Azov. Its orthography is Cyrillic and Greek. The Crimean Peninsula has actually had a Greek-speaking populace for over 2,500 years, owing to its 7th to 6th century BC historical ties with ancient Greek colonies and the later Byzantine Empire. Why is this important? Well, Arkhip Kuindzhi was part of the rich tapestry that makes up modern Ukraine, and by extension, makes up modern Ukrainian culture. Kuindzhi was 6 years old when he lost his parents, so he was forced to make a living doing things like working on a church building site, grazing farm animals, and he received the rudiments of an education from a Mariupolitan Greek friend of the family. He then went to a simple local school. In 1855, at age 13 to 14, Kuindzhi visited Feodosia to study art under Ivan Ivanovsky. That's the same Ivanovsky who painted this picture that was featured in our last episode on the art that the Russians had stolen from the Kherson Museum of Art as they withdrew from Kherson city itself in November of 2022. Kuindzhi's art captivated people with its vibrancy, earning him the epithet Master of Light. He produced numerous Ukrainian landscape and seascape paintings during his life, including Chematsky Path in Mariupol, painted 1875. The Top of Mount Elbrus in the Sunlight, painted 1908. Tata Scala in Crimea, painted between 1896 and 97. Following Ukrainian independence in 1991, an art gallery in honor of Kuindzhi was established here at number 58 Heroyevska Street, Mariupol. Here is the Kuindzhi Museum before the Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine. At the time these photos were taken, the museum's comprehensive collection included 650 paintings, 960 pieces of graphic art, 150 sculptures, and over 300 other items of art. The museum's open spaces served as venues for various cultural events such as lectures, music evenings, film screenings, highlighting individual Ukrainian artists and their work. However, all of this abruptly ceased when the Russian armed forces invaded Ukraine on February the 24th, 2022. On March the 21st, a Russian bomb struck the museum. 3 original Kuindzhi paintings were thought to be housed here at the museum at this time. When the Russians looted Mariupol, they went looking specifically for Kuindzhi paintings. On April the 25th, Russians wearing balaclavas stormed into places such as the Kuindzhi Art Museum, demanding, "Where are the Kuindchis?" This is the point where Tochnyi's research into what the Russians stole from here in Mariupol begins. Two questions are salient at this point. Whilst destroying Mariupol, why did the Russians want to steal Ukrainian artist Arkhip Kuindzhi's paintings? Which Kuindzhi paintings are we talking about here? Can we determine if the Russians actually stole them, or if they were destroyed by the Russians' own shelling, burning, and widespread destruction of Mariupolitan buildings, such as number 58, Heroyoivska Street, the Kuindzhi Museum itself, that you can see pictured here. Incidentally, if you recognize this painting, it's called The Autumn Slush. Kuindzhi painted it in 1870. So, how much is one Kuindzhi painting worth? Well, in 2008, a buyer paid $392,532 for this Kuindzhi painting that you can see in front of you now. It's called Paysage Russe, and it was sold at auction house Egudes in France. So the question of why can be answered with theft. This is Russians stealing Ukrainian property and stealing Ukrainian possessions that did not belong to Russians. But in addition to dishonestly appropriating property belonging to Ukrainians, is there another reason? Yes, the Russians have systematically erased, destroyed, or dishonestly appropriated Ukrainian culture wherever they have occupied and continue to do so. The Russians demolished this monument to Arkhip Kuindzhi in Mariupol. Prior to this, they had destroyed and renamed a street that had been named after him. So why did they destroy the monument, but nick the paintings? Cambridge University expert on Russian imperialism, Molly Arbuthnot, concluded this self-evident fact, that the Russians' removal of the Kuindzhi paintings from Mariupol is, quote, part of the Russians' deliberate erasure of Ukrainian culture. In other words, this is theft, avarice, rapacity, and cultricide, the systematic destruction of a culture, particularly one unique to a specific ethnicity or a political, religious, or social group. So, which paintings can we determine were stolen? The Kuindzhi paintings in question today are Red Sunset on the Dnipro, Mount Elbrus in the Sunlight, Autumn in Crimea, and a reproduction of Moonlit Night at Sea. Here's Red Sunset on the Dnipro in the Kuindzhi Gallery in 2021. The Russians, as we have seen with their deportation of tens of thousands of Ukrainian children into Russia, and their own alleged captivity of millions of other Ukrainians, the Russians publicized their crimes. So did the Russians publicize their theft of these paintings? Yes, they did. This man is a Russian named Alexander Mozgovoy inside the Kuindzhi Museum in February of 2022 when he was a purported television news anchor for the Russian state media outlet Izvestia News. Here's some of Mozgovoy's recent work after his promotion in Russian state media from the 26th of February 2024. It's called The Everyday Life of Stormtroopers, and it's about how he visited a training ground in the Zaporizhia region where he met with a Russian airborne assault regiment named the Novorossiysk Mountain Airborne Formation. Mozgovoy, along with a man named Zeldyakov, who claimed to be his photographer at the time, but we'll come to him later, are at this point significant. Also important is the woman you see here, Natalia Kapushnikova, the director of another museum in Mariupol. Here she is, standing in front of the Kuindzhi Museum as it was being looted by the Russians, next to a portrait of Arkhip Kuindzhi by Grigory Kalmykov, another Ukrainian artist, by the way, which was painted in 1910. A painting which is being preserved here, propped up against the gate of the museum before being loaded onto that Russian truck we saw earlier. Originally, on March the 20th, 2022, as Russia's armed forces committed its litany of systematic destruction of Ukrainian lives and property in Mariupol, the chairman of the Ukrainian Union of Artists, Konstantin Chernavsky, claimed, perhaps in an attempt to throw the Russians off the trail, that the 3 Kuindzhi paintings were not in the Kuindzhi Museum at the time of Russia's March bombing of the museum, but had instead been moved to a, quote, secret location. This location, it transpired, was well known by Natalia Kapushnikova, the director of the other museum. Kapushnikova knew the exact secret storage place of the Kuindzhi paintings, and on April the 25th, with comportment confected for Russian media personnel led by Alexander Muzkovoy, Ms. Kapushnikova, claiming she was trying to protect the paintings, turned out to be extremely willing to help them. The secret storage place of these priceless works of Ukrainian art turned out to be her home. Here is Natalia Kapushnikova at her house in Mariupol, unpacking for the camera, with help, looted Ukrainian paintings from Mariupol. See if you can spot anything familiar. That's right, that's the top of Mount Elbrus in sunlight, by Arkhip Kuindzhi. That's a painting that looks remarkably like Moonlit Night at Sea. And something else rather Kuindzhi-esque. And autumnal. And there is Red Sunset on the Dnipro by Arkhip Kuindzhi. And in case you're wondering, that is the look of someone who knows exactly what they're doing. You might be wondering, who is the man standing next to her? You know, this man here, the man holding up that priceless Ukrainian painting the Russians stole from Mariupol. And this man here, loading the stolen Ukrainian paintings into that Russian truck outside the museum of Arkhip Kuindzhi. The guy ordering the man in the balaclava where to put the stolen Ukrainian painting. His name is Mikhail Zeltikov. And here he is on Russian state television, appearing as the, quote, Minister of Culture for the internationally unrecognized and currently Russian-occupied territories of the so-called DPR. And here's Alexei Muzkovoy posing with Red Sunset on the Dnipro. Back in Mariupol, Zeltikov was the mere assistant to Muzkovoy. Quite the career change. So where did these paintings go after the Russians stole them from Mariupol? Meet Lena Garmash, the head of the, quote, Donetsk History Museum, and someone who helpfully admitted to handling stolen goods. At the end of June 2022, Lena Garmash accidentally mentioned that a total of 25 paintings from Mariupol, including 3 Kuindzhis, were being stored here. Here's Lena Garmash at her museum, with her specs on the table. Here's Lena Garmash sitting on the right at a cultural event in St. Petersburg at the end of 2022. Here's Lena Garmash, second from left, at an event in Moscow. And who might that be on the right in this picture but Natalia Kapushnikova? So one possibility as to where these Arkhip Kuindzhi paintings ended up is this place, in Donetsk. Another possibility is these stolen Ukrainian paintings are in the country which launched this genocidal war in Ukraine, Russia. The paintings can't be sold on the international market. Anyone trying to sell them outside Russia would be arrested. Natalia Kapushnikova, however, is on an EU sanctions list. Those sanctions are growing every day of her life. Arkhip Kuindzhi's paintings are items of Ukrainian heritage, which are treasured by Ukraine and Ukrainians. And this is one of the reasons, along with avarice, malice, rapacity, is why the Russians stole them. The search for them, and every item stolen by Russia, is, like the paintings themselves, timeless.